Good evening. Welcome to the September 11th, 2017 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Father Habib from St. Mark Coptic Orthodox Church with us this evening to lead us in the invocation. Please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Father. Please come to the podium.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. We thank you, our Lord, for this opportunity to gather another time to serve your community, serve your people. We thank you for your protected hand for our brothers and sisters who went through these hurricanes. Although what happened could be much worse, this will help us to learn to give thanks always for all things. To God, we ask you to reward your sons and daughters for their time and their effort, and to lead them to serve this community, to bless the city of Troy, to bless every member, give them wisdom and understanding to lead our city in all prosperity and success. We ask you to bless the activity of this weekend, the Troy Days, make it a reason for getting the community together to strengthen the relationship, keep it safe for everyone to attend and to enjoy. We offer this praying in your beloved Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Father. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Councilmember Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember McCown?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here. All present. Before we start, I would like to move that the Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Councilman Pennington at the special City Council meeting of September 11th due to business obligations.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Baker, that we excuse the absence of Councilman Pennington at the special City Council meeting of September 11th, 2017. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have 3 this evening. C1, as indicated on the agenda, is an update from Oakland County Commissioner Doug Teets, but Commissioner Wade Fleming is here also to assist with that update. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having us. Again, my name is Doug Teets, your Oakland County Commissioner, representing the northern half of Troy, western half of Rochester Hills, and just a small portion of Auburn Hills. And with me this evening is the senior member of the delegation from Troy, in experience, not in age, and that is Commissioner Fleming. Go ahead.
Thank you, young man.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure serving with Councilman Teets and now Commissioner Teets. And thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council, for allowing us to speak briefly tonight. We both serve on a number of committees. Myself including, I serve on the Finance Committee. We just completed our budget. We'll be voting on our budget really soon. And some good news for you guys. I also serve on as chair of the subcommittee for special road funding. And we're able to get in the budget again this year, another $1 million for cities and townships for matching funds, in addition to your Tri-County funding. So we looked at increasing that this year to $2 million, but decided we would keep it at $1 million because we have to also look at our fund balance and our AAA bond rating And so we decided to keep it exactly the same. But you will be getting a letter, City Manager Kirsten, you'll be getting a letter soon advising that you'll have an opportunity to have some matching funds. I know this year we used the funds in Troy to work on Elmwood, so you'll have an opportunity to do some more road work, much needed. And I know you're spending the money wisely.
We'll take the full $1 million.
You know, it's unfortunate that some communities are not in a position to match the funds, so we're looking at how we can take the extra funds and maybe redistribute, so hopefully you get a little more money this year. So I'll let Commissioner Teets speak, and I may have a couple words to say when you're done.
Sure. You know, part of being here is bringing you information and also telling you concerns that we're hearing at the county. Information, obviously, the fund balance of the county is strong. AAA bond rating. I have the good fortune of representing 2 communities that have AAA bond ratings. So, Rochester Hills, that's a community to the north, councilmen, and then the beautiful city of Troy, Michigan, my hometown. But I also have heard concerns from the Oakland County Executive about the proposed charter amendment that's before the citizens. As noted by the administration here, that proposed charter amendment puts in danger the district court. Obviously, we want the district court located in Troy, and the lease that the city has with the district court and therefore the county is a point of contention. And so we've been approached by the county executive and members of his office repeatedly to talk about that issue, and I know they've been in touch with the city manager. And so this is a concern that we've heard from the administration of the county, and hopefully something that can be resolved, and I'm sure you're working with the county to make that happen. So I don't know if the Commissioner Fleming have any wise words?
Yeah, Commissioner Teets, I've heard the same thing. I've been approached by the legal department at the county, as well as a senior member of Brooks Patterson's staff, saying, what are we going to do? And I know they're in the process of trying to renegotiate a lease there. I hope this council will work with them, and I'm sure you will in good faith. I think this is a situation where good people started an action, and there are unintended consequences. And I think this is just one example of an unintended consequence when you put a county court lease in jeopardy because of a potential ballot initiative there. But I know that they were well-intentioned, but some unintended consequences. It's unfortunate. But thank you in advance, for I know you'll be working with them. I know they're contacted.
Never one to end on negative news. Always want to end on the positive, because we live in a great country and a great time, and whatever challenges we face, we as Americans will overcome. But I think one of the great news about Oakland County, things continue to thrive. Yeah. And you see that down in Big Beaver, you see down Stevenson Highway and Maple Road. Our city, our region continues to thrive. And that has to do with good governance and good people taking on a challenge. And so thank you, City Council, for everything you do. You know, it's a difficult job. I suffered 4 years, and some days we're suffering, if you recall that era.
I remember.
And I think it was, I think it's up to local government to actually make a difference in people's lives. You know, we always try to rely on, the big brother will help. Big Brother isn't going to help. It comes up to local government and the things that you guys do. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Did you want to field any questions from council, or are you...
Only if they're hard.
Any hard questions for Commissioner Teets? Any comments? Thank you. Appreciate the update, and as you know, we're concerned about the charter amendment as well, and hopefully we'll take care of the district court tonight, or we'll at least be talking about it. So thanks for your input, and thanks for what you do for our city.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is C2, which is a check presentation from Gold Star Property Restoration owners, Steve and Matt Berinsky, and brand manager Melissa Jones. I would also ask City Stewart, our Community Affairs Director, and Chief Gary Mayer to also come forward for the check presentation. And if you don't mind, I think I'll meet you down at the podium, if that would be okay.
Sure, be great.
Mr. Mayor. Good to see you too. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
We wanted to present you with this check. It's for the Police and Fire Benevolent Foundation, all the hard work you guys do. So we had a little family fun day a couple weeks ago. We had a pretty good turnout, really good turnout. Next year we're going to have an even better turnout. So, but we appreciate everything you guys do, and anything we can do to help you guys, please let us know in the future. So,
I'm going to hand this over to Cindy Stewart and Chief Mayor, because they're the integral part of the Benevolent Fund, and I'll give this to them, and then I have something for you.
sure.
Do you want to say anything?
And we'd like to say thank you to you, because when Melissa approached me about this, we thought what a great idea that you were going to do this Family Fun Day for our residents. And when she said they wanted to do it as a fundraiser for the Troy Police and Fire Benevolent Association, we were thrilled. I'm the secretary of the association, and Gary is our vice president. And we have other police and firefighters, and we have some people within the community from Doran Mayhew, and I forgot where Mike is from. Global Wealth Management. So on behalf of the Benevolent Association, we know we can help more people in need with this check.
Yeah, keep us in mind. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, I have a special recognition certificate that I'd like to present to Gold Star Property Restoration. And on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to read this to you and thank you for what you've done for the city and what you've done for our benevolent fund. So whereas Troy Business Gold Star Property Restoration was founded 17 years ago by Steve and Matt Brzezinski, is correct? Their compassionate team of disaster restoration experts are ready to help people rise above the unexpected. Matt and Steve and their dedicated employees help people navigate the restoration process and the complex insurance claims related to fire, storms, or floods. And whereas to the Gold Star team, a family's house is so much more than a claim number or financial investment. It's where a family's story is written. It's a place that should bring them comfort and peace. That's why the Gold Star employees dedicated all of our talent and resources to helping people overcome serious disasters and to making their house feel like home again. And whereas Gold Star's brand manager, Melissa Jones, contacted the City of Troy with an idea to sponsor a family fun day at J.C. Park to raise money for Troy Police and Fire Benevolent Association in order to give back to the Troy community. And whereas the Troy Police and Fire Benevolent Association, a nonprofit organization, was established by Troy police officers, Troy firefighters, city employees, community volunteers, and concerned citizens to provide assistance to people in need, including families of public safety and employees experiencing financial distress or personal tragedy. And whereas the Gold Star Family Fun Day was held at J.C. Park on Saturday, August 26th, providing a bounce house, obstacle course, games, coloring station, face painting, food, police, fire, and DPW vehicles, and of course fun for Troy families in exchange for a donation to the TPFBA. I was there and I participated in some of that. I didn't get my face painted.
Bounce house.
Yeah, just a bounce house. I had a fun day. But, so now, therefore, be it known that the Troy City Council takes this opportunity to express its sincere appreciation and recognition to Steve and Matt Brzezinski, Melissa Jones, and all of the Gold Star Property Restoration employees for their efforts in planning and organizing the Gold Star Family Fun Day for our community to enjoy, as well as raising $2,000 for the Troy Police and Fire Benevolent Association. So be it further known that by donating their time and talents, the Gold Star team has furthered the ideals that contribute to enriching our community. Troy is very fortunate to have businesses like Gold Star Property Restoration and owners Steve and Matt Brzezinski to give so much time and energy to make our community a great place to work, play, and raise a family. Presented this 11th day of September 2017 is signed by myself, all members of City Council, thank you so much for what you've done for our community and the Benevolent Association. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was one, Mayor. Yeah.
Finer detail.
Somebody noticed. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Mayor, thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is C3, which is a proclamation to proclaim September 2017 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Troy. And I'd like to make the presentation to Beaumont Children's Hospital, Dr. Charles Main, Chair of Pediatric Hematology Oncology. I knew that. And of course, RN Lisa Muna, I'd like to make that presentation. If you could just come forward, I'd be honored to make this presentation. Come on around here. Nice to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor to proclaim Childhood Cancer Awareness Month for September of 2017. And I'd like to read this proclamation into the record. Whereas childhood cancer is the #1 cause of death from disease among children. Every day, 43 children in the United States are diagnosed with cancer, and the average age of diagnosis is 6 years old. Around the world, 1 child every 2 minutes is diagnosed with cancer. And whereas 1 in every 1,000 18-year-olds in the United States is a survivor of childhood cancer as a result of overall cure rates that have risen to more than 80% over the past 40 years. Only 4% of federal government cancer research funding goes to childhood cancer research. And whereas lifelong follow-up care is recommended for all childhood cancer survivors due to the possibility of late side effects associated with treatment. And whereas the impact of a childhood cancer diagnosis produces multiple challenges to a family. Children and their families need and deserve the full support of their communities while undergoing treatment. And whereas our community has the opportunity to make a significant impact on the lives of children currently being treated for cancer, childhood cancer survivors, and their families. And whereas our residents can take part in a number of activities to raise awareness about pediatric cancers involving purchasing patient-designed T-shirts, attending the Twist Away childhood cancer event on September 21st at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, and Dine to Donate on September 25th at Granite City on West Big Beaver in Troy. So now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Troy hereby proclaims September 2017 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Troy, and joins Beaumont Children's to honor all childhood cancer survivors for their strength and determination. And be it further resolved that the Detroit City Council of the City of Troy applaud the hardworking doctors, nurses, and staff at Beaumont Children's who dedicated their lives to caring for children affected by cancer. Presented this 11th day of September 2017, once again signed by myself, all members of City Council. Doctor, thank you so much for what you do for the community. Congratulations on this being Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a particularly significant September for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. When I first started taking care of children with cancer in 1964, the survival rate for the most common form of childhood cancer, leukemia, was about 2%. For about the last 8 years now, it's been in the about 85% and sort of stuck in that area. So that a child that came in that was diagnosed with leukemia had an 85% chance of being a long-term survivor, however, a 15% chance of not making it, of succumbing to complications from the disease. In the last month, some years of research based upon a tremendous amount of work has come forward with a newer treatment that instead of being based upon surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation, the blood of the patient is treated and the child's own lymphocytes, child's own infection-fighting white blood cells are programmed to destroy their own cancer. And many of those children in that 15% that just a few years ago wouldn't have made it have survived. Now it's just starting, but it was fortuitous that it happened to be announced during this month. And based upon the courage of many parents and many very brave children. But I just wanted you all to be aware of that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Before we move on, I'd like to call on Councilman Baker who'd like to say a few words.
I would, and Dr. Main, I met you last year. You came in September, and we presented this to you, and it's been very moving. At that time, I wasn't able to say anything because it was kind of difficult still, but my nephew, or my wife's here, our nephew, was diagnosed with AML leukemia almost 2 years ago, and he was 6 at the time, so it was interesting to hear that that's the most common age. And he's doing well now. I'll start with that. And he's not in this area, so he didn't have your care. But I think what you've done for over 50 years now is amazing. And the toll it takes on families just to go through the process. I know you must have given all that you have in your heart and all of your mind and your soul to be for these families. And I commend you, and I thank you for what you're doing. And Ms. Muma, you as well, of course. I mean, it's amazing work, and but we all need to be so thankful that we have people like you in our world who are willing to devote your careers and lives to constantly improving the lives of so many. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pennington?
Well, I'd like to say something also. Dr. is not only a customer of mine, he's become a friend of mine. We attended his fundraisers for many years, and if it wasn't for great doctors like yourselves and nurses that care for patients, these kids wouldn't have a fighting chance that they do, and I appreciate everything you've done. And we have a mutual friend of ours that was treated by a doctor, and he's doing well now. So thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you again. There are no carryover items this evening, nor public hearings, so we will move to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I will call on Sunil Zamaraman, Troy resident, who wishes to speak. Good evening, Sunil.
Good evening, sir. Good evening out to all the council members. First of all, I just want to announce that I'm Sunil Shivaraman, and I want to say thank you to all of you for allowing me to say a few words here. Tonight, I'm here to announce my candidacy for the Troy City Council, and I want to say that I want to move the city forward together. I want to be your voice to the citizens of Troy in the City Leadership Council. And I also want to say that I will do my best to protect the environment and ensuring fiscal discipline and maintaining and striving to lower our taxes. I will support growth in our city and make sure that it is done in a transparent way and also it's done right. So any more information, you can look for me on the World Wide Web called votesunil.com, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sunil. Next, I'll call on James Savage, Troy resident, who wishes to speak.
None
Okay. I'll defer to that. Thank you. There are no postponed items? Oh, did you want to speak, Mr. Savage, right now?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where we are.
That's correct.
Not on the agenda.
Do you want to speak on an item not on the agenda or on the agenda? Not on the agenda. Okay, I'll call on you in a minute then. Thank you.
Isn't that where
No.
we're? No.
I was supposed to call him Sunil later also, but we hit the wrong button here. Next on the agenda are postponed items. H1, the Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, low bidder meeting specifications for Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, cooperative purchasing contract, which is the roof replacement at 52-4. This item was postponed. City Manager Kishnis, did anyone wish to speak on this item before we address it this evening?
We do not. We've presented it the same way as it came before, now that the city attorney has worked with the county on the lease.
Somebody like to move the resolution to get it on the table for discussion? Councilman McCowan.
I'd like to move agenda item H1, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, low bidder meeting specifications, and Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, cooperative purchasing contract, roof replacement for the 52-4 district. As printed.
Is there any support?
Support.
Moved by Councilman McCowan, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, that we approve H1 Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, low bidder meeting specifications, and Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, cooperative purchasing contract, the roof replacement for 52-4 as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Councilman Baker.
Well, I find myself where we were last time, except that I do know that we have a lease for discussion later. I just want to say I feel like this should be discussed and voted on after we decide what we're doing with the lease and how we're moving forward. It seems to me the right and proper order, because otherwise we face the same, or I personally face the same concerns I shared last time, that if we're not going to renew the lease, or if there's an issue with the lease with the court and the county, then we have to decide if it's the right time to spend this kind of money on a roof. So I'm not sure exactly procedurally how that should be done, other than say maybe perhaps we table it until after. I'm going to move that we table this item until after I-5.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Baker and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick that we table H1 until we've addressed I-5 in the agenda packet. Any further discussion on that? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Next postponed item is H2, which is a requested salary increase for city attorney. Would somebody like to move that resolution? Councilman Pennington.
I'd like to move H2, the requested salary increase for the city attorney as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Pennington, supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve H2, which is a requested salary increase for city attorney, that the city annual salary of the city attorney, lawyer Greg Bloom, shall be increased by 2% effective July 1st, 2017, as printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Lori.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the council members.
Next is regular business, I-1 Board and Committee appointments, mayoral appointments. There are none this evening. I will defer City Council appointments to Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one nomination. I would like to move the nomination of James McCauley.
I hate to interrupt, Ellen, but we're doing appointments.
Oh, I'm sorry. you.
If you could just do the appointments for the Historic District Study Committee.
I apologize, I'm jumping ahead.
I know, I did that once already myself.
All right, I would like to move the appointments to the Historic District Study Committee of Barbara Chambers, Lori Huber, and Charles Segal.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we appoint Barbara Chambers, Lori Huber, Charles Salgat to the Historic District Study Committee, ad hoc committee, which will expire after their ad hoc term. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to the citizens for volunteering to be on that important ad hoc committee. I-2, Board and Committee nominations. There are no mayoral nominations this evening. I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick for City Council nomination.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to move the nomination of James McCauley for the Zoning Board of Appeals position for the term expiring April 30th, 2020.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we appoint James McCauley to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the term that expires 4/30/2020. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to Mr. McCauley for stepping forward to volunteer for that important committee. I-3 is a request for closed session. There is a request if somebody would like to move that resolution. Councilman Baker.
I'd like to move I-3, request for closed session. Be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268E, TSP Services, Inc. versus City of Troy.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Baker and supported by Councilman Pennington, that we approve I-3, a request for closed session, that the Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268E, TSP Services, Inc., v. City of Troy. Discussion. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-4 is a charter amendment to Section 12.4, which is City Council questions and draft flyer. I will defer to City Manager Kishnick and City Attorney Bloom for an update.
So we just wanted to show you here, the city attorney's office and our office have been doing a lot of work trying to determine what the questions are, come up with the answers, and we've done it collaboratively. So you have the questions that were submitted by council with the answers. Then you also have a list of the charter amendment examples, that contracts that would be affected. And then in your packet today, or in your question and answers from today, you have a list which Councilwoman Abraham asked for with when they expire, so that supplements it. And then to continue on, you have a content-neutral flyer that the city attorney's been involved in with our office to make sure it tells the facts. And of course, you know, I know there's been some comments from council members individually to me about not including the existing charter components, adding questions and answers on here, and certainly we can amend this as desired by the council, and we're willing to have that discussion tonight.
Thank you. Anything additional, City Attorney Bloom?
Yes, just, again, this represents a draft. Obviously, we're looking for input. Also, it was a little difficult to follow past format when we had like a yes vote means this and a no vote means that. It was difficult to come up with that, but this brochure is basically a draft, and we appreciate your input. Also, the FAQs, I would just indicate that those are just the ones that we have received so far. We do anticipate that there will be other questions that are coming, and we hope to answer those and provide those answers in the public document as well.
Thank you. Somebody like to move the resolution to get it on the table for discussion? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move I-4 Charter Amendment to Section 12.4, City Council Questions, a draft flyer as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve I-4, the Charter Amendment to Section 12.4, City Council Questions and Draft Flyer as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Councilman Baker, question?
I have a question. It's probably for the city clerk. I noticed the resolution calls for any flyer we do, whether it's this one or modified, to be mailed to all households in the city of Troy. Is there a difference between households versus registered voter households? And when is the voter registration deadline for the November 7th election?
So first, the difference is you could have more than one registered voter at a household. So it means basically one goes to each address. So if you had 2 registered voters, you would get one for them both to share. And the difference is we have about 58,000 registered voters. We have 28,500 households. So it's about half.
Do those households all have registered voters?
Yes, because those households are obtained through our voting system. That's how we keep track. So we have an option to choose just households, and then it just gives us the registered voters at this address. So that's how we come up with that list. So we would be providing the city managers and the city attorney's offices that list for mailing.
And when is the last day?
The last day to register to vote, I believe it's October 7th. Let me just double check that real quick. It is October 10th. It's the last day to register to vote.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just for clarification, were you suggesting that we should have registered voter households in the resolution then?
Well, that was kind of my question. I didn't understand if there are households aside from, if people don't vote and aren't going to vote and have no registered voters, is it worth mailing them something if they don't have a voter in that household? So I didn't know if that term household is...
Right. So,
but I think you said you
right.
use households based on registered voter data information. Anyway.
Correct, because we get that list through our qualified voter file, which is the state way of managing the voter registration list. So it wouldn't be going to any households that did not have any registered voters at it.
Okay.
Councilman Henderson.
Follow-up to that question then is when do absentee ballots go out in relation to last time you can register to vote?
Right, so the first day that we would be sending absentee ballots out would be October 2nd.
So follow-up to that would be then, so you can register to vote after the absentee ballots go out?
Correct.
Right.
So they start
Right.
going.
So we send out right now we're working on our permanent absentee list, which is typically the first batch of ballots that goes out is everyone that responded to our permanent absent voter mailing, because we mail out applications about 75 days before each election to all of our permanent absent voters. So right now, the bulk of the applications that we get back before October 2nd will be to that went out to that permanent list. And then October 10th is the deadline to register to vote. So anyone who registers to vote in person on October 10th could turn around and request an absentee ballot pretty much, by October 10th could also request an absentee ballot.
One last follow-up on that. So is it possible that we could do the mailing to hit the absentee voters and then maybe a follow-up to catch anybody that might register to vote after October 6th?
You could certainly, whatever council decides to do with their mailing, you could do that as well. It's just a matter of postage and printing costs.
Any other questions or comments at this point? I have a couple of questions and a concern. I understand this is just a preliminary work and that we make the decisions on what goes on here, but it just seems to me if we're trying to be neutral that we should be presenting factual information. And if it is factual information that these 33 contracts, leases, that's a fact that should be put on the sheet so that those that are going to vote yes or no understand what the consequences of each of those votes. And if it is a factual bit of information, I don't understand why that might not be included in the brochure. So, City Attorney Bloom, is that something you were looking for us to do as opposed to putting that on the brochure?
Mayor, I think there are a couple of things. First of all, there are a couple of different ways that you can get the message out. One of those might be on the city's website. Again, as long as it's content neutral, you can put information on your website. I think that the brochure, the way it's designed, it's only double-sided because I think that saves on postage and it's easier understood. We're also very aware of trying to make it catchy, trying to make it so that the registered voters would actually read the document and not have too much information on there. Obviously, you can amend it however you want to. We did say that there were over 200 agreements with various entities. It's in one of the bubble boxes on this current one, and we've given just a couple of examples with agreements with the Troy Historical Society, the Troy Nature Society, and Billy Casper Golf.
Councilman Baker.
Is it content neutral to say if this passes, a yes vote means you would have to vote on a renewal contract with these things?
That would be something that you could do. You need to say what a no vote would mean though as well, I think, somehow. I think you have to balance that out.
Just seems like if you're trying to be factual, that you would want to include what the results of a yes or a no vote would be. It just seems that should be on there because if we're going to list 3 of them, I think we should list them all, and not just 3 of them. To some people, one of the other 30 could be more significant to them than the 3 that we list. Seems like if we're going to go to listing 3, we should list them all, and then also put something on there for a no vote would mean this also.
I agree. Something to that effect, definitely.
Councilman McCowan?
Actually, I actually, when the agenda came out and it had the list of the entirety of everything that would be affected, I took a screenshot of it on my phone because as people approach me as the election gets closer, they ask me, what properties would be affected, and I think it's important, as the mayor is saying, that we list everything that would be affected. I think that's an important point to make.
In a follow-up to that is, I think I understand why the other charter sections were put on there, but to me, I think it's going to add confusion somewhat to this brochure, because when you jump from section 12.1 to section 12.3, I would wonder what in the heck is 12.2, and section 5.6, it seems like I'm not sure there's a need for that, and that seems that it would be better served to have the list of what would be affected by a yes or no vote as opposed to that. To me, that portion seems to add confusion, in my opinion. I don't know if there's anyone else on council. Councilman Baker.
I agree with what you just said on that. I had that same thought as well. Although I do like the language, I guess we're talking this out here at this point. I do like the language that says this charter amendment would be in addition to existing charter sections restricting city council's real property powers, maybe even including section 12.1 without the language 12.3, just so they know that if they wanted to look it up. Because I think that's important in this, that it's not like we have unchecked power to do whatever we want with city property. There already are very serious restrictions. And to our previous little discussion that we started, I'm concerned about us coming up with a content neutral, what a no vote means, other than saying a no vote means all of these contracts. I mean, I don't know how you phrase that. If it needs to be posed as a yes versus no, I don't know where to go with that. Maybe somebody else does, but that's I think that's difficult to do, other than saying yes. A yes vote means all of these contracts have to be voted on. I guess a no vote means all of these contracts don't. Or so to be fair, I guess it's be content neutral. So that's a struggle.
Yeah, City Attorney Bloom.
I will tell you that we did invite some of the circulators to provide language to us, and we don't have anything from them yet, but I did suggest that we would be willing to accept whatever they could provide, and if it could be used, then we would be happy to do that. We have not received anything yet. We may. It is possible to maybe try and come up with something that just, it has to be content neutral, but, your original thought, is if a yes vote would mean that the voters would have to vote on these contracts. That's possible.
That's the easier one for us it's the other side of it.
Councilman Henderson.
Are we premature talking about this then until we get feedback from the petition circulators?
Because of the timing and because the absentee ballots are going out on October 2nd, we have one more council meeting. I think that if you were to approve it on the meeting of the 25th, that there still would be enough time to get it printed and then distributed before the absentee ballots are required to be turned in. So we wanted to get this out there. We wanted to get this going as quickly as possible.
Councilman Henderson.
Were they informed of a deadline to get data to us?
We've asked them to provide it to us as quickly as possible. They knew that this was going in the form of a draft brochure for this meeting, yes.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
When I look at this, if you vote no, you aren't changing the petition, and you are voting to rely on what is already in the charter, which is the 3 amendments that are there. So that's what a no vote does, is it retains the charter as it is, which includes these protections for our properties and the protection from an abuse of power from the city council. And I think an important additional piece of information is that there is that one piece of the charter that allows for residents to bring forward, without changing the charter, the capacity to vote as a public. And so, yes means you add this to the charter, which means you create these scenarios of having to vote for all these different contracts, giving simple language. A no vote means you keep the charter as is, and the charter already includes, and so you are relying on these elements of the charter to do these tasks. That to me is when I'm talking to people, that's what I'm saying. And I think that's neutral. I mean, that's the facts of the matter. And just an additional comment, there's a lot of detail in the question and answer that we received that I think the public should be able to see. It won't fit on this. So if we can put the website link to a place where people can go for that information, I think that would be valuable.
I agree with that. Councilwoman Abraham.
Some of the FAQs that came in from council are in regards to what other cities are doing. And I think that's an important bit of information that is very content content neutral, that I think people need to understand, that this is not something that is seen in any other city in Michigan. The other FAQ that I think would be wonderful to weave in, and it's something that you heard our commissioners, county commissioners, reference, was our AAA bond rating and potential impact. There may not be any, but there is some potential impact given that we're changing how contracts will be approved. So I think that might be another element to incorporate.
I would agree with that also.
Yes.
Personally. Any other comments, suggestions? The way that I see this is that we will table this until 2 weeks from tonight at the next city council meeting, which gives us time to put it out and to come back to us with those suggestions that were made. The only other comment that I have is that this is very unique to the city of Troy, and I wouldn't want expense to be the deciding factor as to what should be or shouldn't be in here. If it costs a little bit more money to make it bigger, or as long as we stay neutral, I'm not opposed to making it bigger, making it more clarity, or whatever needs to be done to make sure that we get the message out there correctly. I don't know if there's consensus on that too. Councilman McCollum.
Sorry.
Oh, just scratching. Any other Councilman Henderson?
Maybe the cutting cost would be not send it out in 4-color or 5-color glossy, scale it down in terms of quality, but bump it up in content.
I think that's what was our...
My past practice from getting this is it's pretty plain. It's not in color, and it's pretty much looks very similar to something like this. Councilman Pennington.
So, Mayor, are we going to have a chance to look at this? Because we're going to have to finalize this in 2 weeks, so we're going to have a chance to look at this before that time?
City Attorney Bloom and City Manager Kishnick, could you communicate with council about this in the next 2 weeks and get some feedback from us also?
Individually, yes.
Individually.
We certainly could do that, and then you can all give us input individually. Certainly, we're going to take any of your suggestions, and that will be helpful to us in coming up with it. Also, additional questions that you have, we would be happy to have those as well and include those and incorporate those.
It's difficult to write this at the table, so we've done this in the past where you've communicated with us individually and got feedback, and then when the product gets to us in 2 weeks, it's firm. And I believe at least one council member won't be here next meeting, so it's important to hear from everyone before then. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
I have a question that, looking at this draft, prompted in me. The amendment talks about using the public land, the whole of which is greater than 2 acres, except by an affirmative vote of a majority of electors voting on the question at a general election. So, playing this out in my mind, when we were helping the Troy Family Days out, and coming together in study sessions and working together as a council to facilitate, they had to move it from the venue they were using it at and use a city property. If this passed, we wouldn't have been able to make that decision from the table. It would have had to go to a vote at the next November election because it was entering into a contract for over 2 acres of land.
There are other similar situations. They also have to meet the 90 days, and that's the one thing about Troy Days is it's not a continuous use for more than 90 days. But there are others that are very similar that would be in that same position. That again, we would require a vote of the people before council could do anything with those proposed contracts.
So for more of a long-term use, okay.
90 days, and it's a pretty short period of
That's a short-
time.
Pardon me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what the impact of this is and isn't.
I think we all are.
Okay.
Any other questions we can send to City Attorney Bloom, City Manager Kishnick, and hopefully we can get something on the agenda in 2 weeks that we can vote on to send out. So I'm going to move to table this item until the next City Council meeting.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we table I-4, which is a charter amendment to Section 12.2, City Council questions and draft as printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion on tabling? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is I-5, a renewal of lease agreement between the City of Troy and the County of Oakland. And I would note that there was a yellow sheet placed on the table for council members. And I will defer to City Attorney Bloom for introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, this is one that both the manager and I have been working on with Oakland County. This arises after the discussion at the last meeting and the realization that the investment of roof repairs and other investments that Oakland County was going to be doing may be premature if it's only a year and a half left on the agreement. And with the proposed charter amendment ballot question, that could be a very real possibility. So we talked, both of us talked with Oakland County representatives the very next day. Oakland County had, did some really quick work as well. And what it's proposing is to extend the lease for 15 years, an additional 15 years. Now that would have to be with the approval of the City of Troy as well. But, normally we would go out, look and make sure that that the market rates were comparable and things like that. But because of the investment that they're making, because of the very quick time frame for doing the roof and the desire to get it done during this season, they really felt it was very important to propose this lease extension, extending it 15 years. All other terms would remain the same. City administration has looked at it. We're very comfortable with the terms remaining the same. There is the ability to charge more if additional repairs are necessary and to adjust that amount.
Thank you. Any questions for City Attorney Bloom? Councilman Henderson.
Attorney Bloom, did I just hear you say that, so if we extend this 15 years tonight, that every 5 years, if the proposal passes in November, that this would have to go to a vote of the people?
No.
For the extension?
No.
I didn't hear that? Okay.
This is the reason why they're asking for 15 years at this time prior to November, so that they will have 16 and a half years before this lease expires, due to the amount of the investment and also just the time that it would take them to get a new building and everything should the proposal pass and everything.
Okay. Is it practical to try to get this done for 200 other contracts before November?
No.
Yeah. Nice try, though.
Yeah.
Well, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I struggle with voting yes on this, is that in some way are we circumventing the vote in November by doing this. But to me, that issue is kind of outweighed by the amount of money that would be invested in this, $600,000 for the roof, and I think county was going to invest $500,000 in security for the courthouse next year, so we're talking about $1 million+ and trying to be fiscally responsible with that. So, before we have further discussion, would somebody like to move the resolution to get it on the table for discussion? Councilman Pennington.
I move I-5, the renewal of the lease agreement between the City of Troy and the County of Oakland as printed.
Support.
In the yellow copy that was presented on the desk, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Pennington, supported by Councilman McCollum, that we approve I-5, which is the renewal of the lease agreement between the City of Troy and the County of Oakland as printed in the yellow sheet on Council's desk. Further discussion. Councilman Henderson.
Mayor, to your point, just previous to putting this on the table, that's why the people elect us to do this kind of thing, so that they don't have to look at these kind of agreements in a rush situation without all the details to get them approved. That's our job, that's our responsibility, and it's our responsibility to rely on the city attorney and the city manager to give us the details we need to make those decisions. So again, this is just a very good example of why that proposal has to go down in November. And I don't have any problem passing this to have an extension of 15 years to get this done outside of that.
Good point. Councilman Baker.
In a similar vein, and I'm going to support this because I think it's important, but this to me is a prime example of, I choose my words carefully here, of how ridiculous this system could become if we're now trying to scramble to renew a lease because a long-term tenant, it was Oakland County, by the way, not, a very good tenant, they're worried that they would have to leave their courthouse by a vote of the people. And whether the people would vote that way or not is a whole other question, but the fact that it's even coming before us in a rushed manner, and this is one that we actually can take care of and not have to worry about it, I'm thankful we can, but I'm also saddened that it's one of 200. And, good for Oakland County, good for us that we can do this. But by the way, a 16-and-a-half-year extension is kind of unheard of in many ways. I mean, there's long-term leases, but I mean, that's a big deal. And we are doing that because of the threat of what this extreme charter amendment could do in November. And I don't believe, Commissioner Fleming said it best, I think, earlier tonight. I don't believe that was what the intended results were of this petition drive initially. And that the people who circulated the petitions were trying to do something very specific and had their best intentions involved. But this is the kind of consequence that's coming from it. And it's sad for our city that we're faced with this, and now we're scrambling when we have plenty of other things going on in the city that need to be taken care of as well. And the list of agreements that are affected by this is the non-exhaustive list, by the way, which means there's more. It's appalling. So I hope that we can get it out for everyone to see. And, again, I guess I'm thankful that we could resolve this with the county because they're good tenants and we want to have a good relationship with them. But I hope people can really wrap their heads around this and understand that this charter amendment has dire consequences.
Thank you. Councilman Pennington, did you?
Yeah, I got a quick question. It would be for City Attorney Bloom. Now, if we okay this for a 15-year lease instead of a 5, does that leave us open to, if there's any cost overruns in that 10, in that 10 years, are we on the hook for that, or would that be something we could pass along, or would we miss out because we're okay in a 15-year agreement instead of a 5-year agreement?
There is some ability to adjust the amounts that we collect, however, it is limited. So you're taking it a little bit on faith, but, city administration does feel comfortable that, again, because it is something that we kind of want to make sure that there is a courthouse that is operational, and this is one of the ways to do that, and also to meet the obligations that you have and to be fiscally prudent.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Just a couple questions, one for staff. It's my understanding when we contacted Mr. Patterson's office that there was great concern over this charter amendment, and they were just as concerned as we are about passing this charter amendment.
That's absolutely right, Mayor, and I think that's why you're seeing this lease come in this fashion, because Mr. Patterson's office and Mr. Dado and Jerry Poison, they're all very concerned about this charter amendment and what it could do to the city of Troy. And when the city of Troy is affected, remember, the county's affected. And they look at it that way. When we went to them with the DDA issue, as Troy goes, the county goes. So they're very concerned.
And one of the things I heard from Mr. Patterson's office is that they're proud of their AAA bond rating, and their AAA bond rating gets affected by other AAA bond rated cities. And if this does have the possibility of affecting our AAA bond rating, that will also affect the county's AAA bond rating, and that's another reason why they have concern over this. And I think we're going to get support from them when we move down the road. Second of all, just to kind of piggyback on Councilman Baker, you know, this is extreme and this is radical, and I'm going to use those words from now until November. And I somewhat agree that this is unintended consequences from some of the people that belong to this committee, but I also believe that there's a radical faction within that committee that this is exactly what they intended to do. And I think there are people on that committee that got bamboozled into something that they didn't want, that they never intended to do. And it is going to be unintended consequences if this does pass. Councilman Henderson.
One last question. If we decide not to approve this and it goes to a vote and that proposal passes and we lose Oakland County as a tenant, who would be next in line to lease that building out?
I'm going to defer to the city manager.
I absolutely will answer that. I have no idea. And there would be significant costs in renovating the building, whoever that tenant is. You know, we would work with a broker to try to lease it out, but we would be stuck with the facility, obviously.
I knew that answer. I just make that point.
Thank you.
Councilman McCowan.
And just to follow up, even if you did work with a broker to find someone to lease it, there's still nothing that could be done about it until it was voted on if this ballot initiative passed.
Be a new lease.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
I think those of us at the table that have been wrestling with our AAA bond rating, that is impacted by the millage cap that was voted in because we changed the charter as a community, that introduced already tremendous complications to managing this city effectively and protecting that bond rating. There were folks at the time that said, nah, that's not a factor. I guess if I could just say, we actually devoted an entire study session amongst ourselves, my first year on council, so almost 4 years ago, to really wrap our heads around decisions we could and couldn't make and things we could consider with our fund balance. And that AAA bond rating is, there's like black and white elements of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, city manager, finance director. There's some things that he could tell us unequivocally, this is what you do and you don't do. And then there were the gray areas that can affect your bond rating. And one of them was just the efficiency of your government. And we are known, this city, for being so well run and so well managed, like the county, nationally. And I think what you're hearing us say, I know what you're hearing us say, is we understand that this will impact that ability to be that effective municipality tremendously. This is to manage ourselves by sending contracts for using public property to a vote of the people every November. It's just untenable. So it's a no-brainer to know that this could impact our bond rating. And out in the community, there will be those that say, no, they can work around, just like they did when they passed the millage cap. So really be careful, voters, that maybe you're thinking, oh, it's just those politicians, and we all doubt politicians in government. Really, really research this and understand and look to why we are efficient, why the county is efficient, how that affects your insurance rates, your tax rate. It's real. It's very real. And so, and the fact that we're doing this and in this situation is frustrating, because this isn't how we manage ourselves. This isn't how we work with entities like the county. Thank goodness they were willing to lock arms with us to do this and do right by them, by us, by the building. But one of over 200, anyway, am I right with my assessment on the bond rating? No.
Without going into it, that's well said. I won't add anything to it. You're absolutely.
And correct me if
No, you're very correct. And we did do the study session, and obviously that helped, but you're absolutely right.
I'm sure we're going to be discussing this charter amendment from now until November, so this won't be the last time that we talk about it, I'm sure. Councilwoman Abraham.
One thing that struck me is, we're talking about Oakland County being our tenant, and that this is a pretty big contract and one of the 200. But I'm looking at a list of about 20 contracts or 20 line items. Some are more than one contract within a line item that have to be renewed annually. And these are the little guys. It's the Troy Baseball Boosters. It's the Troy Youth Soccer League, Troy Cowboys, Troy Youth Soccer Club, United Football Soccer Club, Football Club United, Friends of Troy Seniors, the space at the community center, Creative Endeavors at the community center, the food services at the community center. These aren't big tenants like Oakland County. These are people that run maybe nonprofits or at a very thin margin. And every November, we're going to have 20 contracts. Every year should this pass. And that just troubles me greatly.
Well put. Any other comments? The vote on I-5, Ms. Dixon? As was presented on the yellow sheet on the table.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. We will return to H1. Is there any further discussion on H1 before we take that vote? The vote on H1, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you to staff for your hard work. I know it took a lot of time to get that done in such a short period of time. I-6 is the suggested resolution to schedule a joint session on Monday, October 30th, 2017 at 6 p.m. between the City of Troy Council and the Troy Planning Commission. I see Brent Savanant, our Planning Director, is ready to go. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. In recent years, City Council and Planning Commission have met jointly a few times per year to discuss important issues, important projects. In 2016, there were 2 joint meetings. We met on April 18th, 2016 to discuss cluster provisions. We met on October 24th, 2016 to discuss the Troy Town Center project. So it's been almost a year since we had our last joint meeting. And as you're aware, many of the items that go before Planning Commission for consideration ultimately end up in front of City Council for action. So it's important that the two bodies be in sync with one another. And you'll probably remember recently there were 2 conditional rezoning applications that went initially before Planning Commission. They received support or recommendations for approval by Planning Commission, went before City Council, and were ultimately denied. So the Planning Commission has requested that that there be a joint meeting scheduled to discuss the relationship between City Council and Planning Commission as it relates to planning and zoning projects. In addition, the Planning Commission has initiated development of design standards to improve the overall quality of projects in the city. So design standards has been added as a potential topic for discussion. So city administration prepared the suggested resolution that's in front of you this evening to schedule a special joint meeting on Monday, October 30th, 2017 at 6 p.m. City Council, you can adjust the resolution if you see fit. You can add or subtract topics. It's really up to you. Once City Council adopts a resolution outlining the topics that we discussed, City Management will put together a plan of action for that meeting, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Brent? Thank you. I think that covers what Council talked about in a discussion with the Planning Commission. That's my recollection, so looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Someone like to move that resolution? Councilman Baker.
I'd like to move I-6, suggested resolution to schedule a joint study session on Monday, October 30, 2017 at 6 p.m. between the Troy City Council and the Troy Planning Commission, as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Baker, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we approve I-6, the suggested resolution to schedule a joint study session on Monday, October 30th, 2017 at 6 o'clock p.m. between the Troy City Council and the Troy Planning Commission, as printed. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Council will wish to pull a consent agenda item. Councilman McCowan?
Let's pull J6.
6. Any other items?
Mayor.
I will pull J8. City Attorney Bloom, is that what you were?
That was,
okay.
yes, Mayor, thank you.
Councilman Henderson?
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda with the exception of J6 and J8.
Support.
By Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman McCowan, that we approve all items on the consent agenda with the exception of J6 and J8, which shall be considered after the consent agenda items. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman McCowan, J6.
Yes. So I believe, Captain, I asked a few questions. This one was unique to me. It was a bid waiver for vehicle wash services for the police department. And the reason cited was that Jack's Car Wash of Troy, Michigan was the sole source provider of exterior and interior car wash services. So I asked a couple questions to the city manager prior to the meeting. Captain Redmond was kind enough to reply. I thought the answers were satisfactory. I just wanted to get them on the record. So my first question was that I wasn't aware that we only had one interior and exterior car wash service provider in the city of Troy.
That is correct. There is only one. I talked to every manager of every car wash in the city of Troy, even if they had any thought of spending money to create that, so that I wouldn't be picking one individual service. And it's not going to happen in the city of Troy in the future.
Right, and that makes sense to me. So one of the reasons that was provided was that it doesn't make sense for our police officers to spend their time cleaning out the interiors and exteriors of their vehicles. That makes complete sense to me. And again, it also makes sense that given that we're in the city of Troy, proximity seems to be an important issue. One question I had that you did also answer was with respect to biohazard. You said that was a separate contract that we have in place already?
It is not a contract, it's just a service that we can call upon that will immediately respond to the station to clean the car fully. It is dependent upon the amount of debris that may need to be cleaned. So there is no set cost. It'll depend on how long it takes them to do the job. The typical rate is about $150. It may occur 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay, so it's not like
So there's no contract, it's just call and they will come immediately, which is really good.
And then my final question, so I talked with a couple of people on the police force. There are some mixed thoughts about having individuals inside the actual vehicles. I know there's a lot of equipment in there, various weapons, computers, some personal items, things like that. So I know there was a question about how long it would take for the interior of the vehicle to be cleaned. What's the proximity that the officers can be around those vehicles with this service?
You go to Jack's Car Wash, you would be pulling up in a speed-through lane because of the package that we are intending to purchase. And the first stop you make is where the guys open all 4 car doors. They clean the whole interior car where you're standing right there. If the officer wishes, he can climb back into the car and take it through the car wash, or he can walk through the building and catch it at the other end where they finish up and drive away. So literally, it's about a 5-minute process pulling in, provided you're the first car. Obviously, if the line's long, you're going to be there longer, but it's a pretty quick service. It was done in the past for many, many years. We had that service. We've lost it because of budget constraints, probably. We're trying to get it back, and it's safe. It's not going to say that anything wrong can happen. You'd never know, but it never has, and we don't expect it to.
That's all the questions I have. I would also like to thank you for your answers were very good. Full reasoning and logic were provided, so I appreciate your effort. Thank you.
We appreciate you listening to us and at least considering this, so thank all of you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I got a quick one. So I guess it sounds like a concern, Captain Redmond. The only thing I would ask is, so when the officer vacates the car and it's going through, there's not a weapon that someone else could, from the car wash could, there's not a shotgun in that car that they could access or anything?
Yeah, there are weapons in the car, but they are locked.
Yeah.
So the officers know how to unlock them, but the people climbing in the car don't know how to unlock them, so they can't get them out.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCollum, would you want to move J6?
Yes, I'd like to move J6, bid waiver vehicle wash services, police department, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman McCollum and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we approve J6, the bid waiver for vehicle car wash services in the police department as printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. I pulled J8 because that agenda item, there was a slight modification to J8 that was placed on council's table this evening. And I see we're ready for an explanation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. Before you this evening, item J8 is the approval of the private agreement for the Rain Tree Village on the Park development. And this private agreement, we amended the resolution approving the private agreement excluding the water main. And we did that because we felt we needed some more time to talk with the adjoining property owners, 2 of them that are adjacent to a conservation easement. And we want to sit down with them and the developer to talk about the route of the water main, why the water main is needed at that location, what the impact will be in terms of trees, number of trees, and talk about the number of trees that will be replaced as compensation for the trees being removed. And we want to make sure that the property owners know everything about what is going to happen in that conservation easement before it happens, so that when we come back to you at the next council meeting, everyone will be on the same page.
Thank you.
And I see that Joe Miniacci is in the audience if you have any questions for him.
Any questions from council? Councilman Pennington?
Steve, we had a couple of emails from that neighborhood association on drainage, and I just want to make sure that those were addressed with those homeowners.
Concerning drainage?
Yeah.
What specifically are you referring to?
Well, just drainage from the construction that would, or the new construction that would, back up in their property.
Right. As indicated, I think what you're referring to, we indicated in the correspondence with City Council at the time that the preliminary plan was approved, that there was agreement between the developer, Mondrian Properties, and the homeowners association that they would contribute up to $40,000 for repair of the inlet and outlet structures in terms of soil erosion and whatever else might be needed there, and that the city would do periodic inspections of the pond inlet and outlet structures and perform any needed maintenance in the future.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Steve? Councilman Henderson.
Just one, we had the email late this afternoon from the conservation area.
Right.
And have we made contact with those individuals, letting them know that we want to get together? And
Yes, I made contact with the property owner to the west, and Mark Miller made contact with the property owner to the south.
Okay, and they seem...
They are aware of what we're doing, and I can't say that I think they accept what we're doing as the right thing, the right path to take. We're not in total agreement on everything yet, obviously, so.
Right. That's why we sit down.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? I will move J8, the private agreement for contract for installation of municipal improvements, the Reedtree Village on the Park, project number 17.905.3, as printed on the yellow sheet at council table this evening.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve J8 as printed on the yellow sheet at the city council desk this evening. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you were here on a consent agenda item this evening, they've all been approved. Next is memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none submitted this evening, so we will move to public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. And now I will call on James Savage, Troy resident.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
City Council. First, I want to say that I'm going to be talking about this article in the Gazette. Any information that I have on the Civic Center Park project, I got from the Troy Gazette. And in 3 minutes, I cannot read the whole article, but it is full of misleading statements. At the last meeting, in 3 minutes, I got the whole council, and this is according to this. I hope you've all read it. In 3 minutes, I had the whole council mad, and you took the next half an hour taking shots at me. And the quote from there was, quote, "They took turns responding." I made the headline is, "Accusation Stirs Council's Ire." And I am the only person mentioned in this, so I'm assuming it's me. I made no accusations whatsoever. I asked questions which I can't get straight answers to, and I stand by every word I said to this council and any previous council, and I've got the notes and it's on the record. Seems to be some misleading here. You, the council, unanimously approved a resolution requesting the Michigan attorney investigate the petition. This motion was moved by the mayor. You were involved. It was the mayor that made the accusations of criminal activity, not me. And these accusations, to my knowledge, have never been substantiated. Savage contended they were doing this for the tax money. That is false. I never quoted and said that. I quoted from the Gazette. This is a very valuable piece of land, but it does not provide revenue to the city. It is not my quote, but I do challenge the concept that anything the city owns is subject to be profit-making. You have been planning the Civic Centre project for, to my knowledge, 3 or 4 years, and have spent huge sums of taxpayer money on it. You had ample time to place your own plan on the ballot for residents to vote on. Had you done that, there would have been no petition, and there would have been very little for you to talk about tonight. In 2004, I opposed the building on our Civic Centre parkland, and over 80% of Troy residents agreed with me.
Mr. Savage?
1 second.
Well, hang on a minute. Okay, please. I will move to allow Mr. Savage to finish his statement. I will waive the rules.
Support.
Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Please continue.
Thank you. I did not write the petition amendment, but I feel so strongly to protect our green space, I will vote yes on November the 7th unless I am assured that our green space will be protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Aaron Green, Troy resident, who wishes to speak on this item. Good evening.
Good evening, councils. I wanted to speak on one point, but I'm going to talk about another while I'm at it. I wanted to speak to the Troy Historic Village, which is currently working to raise money to keep itself open. It is funded broadly by grants. There's an opportunity for a grant doubling option, and the best place to find that is on their website or at their Facebook page, but I'll read the cumbersome URL out loud. It is http://wshe.es/QIAT47JO. Again, no. It's quite a URL, but it allows you to go in. Residents can go in, or anyone I think can go in once a day, and vote for a particular cause or venue to receive this grant doubling from the Bank of Ann Arbor. It's part of the Birmingham Helps Charity Drive. And this is one of the opportunities, and it's a wonderful thing that's in this city that provides a lot of enjoyment for a lot of residents for a variety of reasons, both educational and otherwise. So I urge everyone to take that opportunity, council, and anyone else who happens to be watching to do so as well. Since I'm up here, I would also like to take a moment to thank you for taking the time to work to put together a good, neutral, informative packet to bring to the residents. As someone who has worked in information, as an information professional for over a decade, I strongly urge you to keep it from being particularly wordy, because that doesn't work particularly well, and glossy and colorful, while expensive, does help, although of course we are trying to be judicious with city funds, so thank you very much for that. I will note that since I have 50 seconds, that I strongly support council's position as taken by all members of all views on a variety of matters, that on this particular matter, that this is potentially disastrous for the city. And while I do not think it is directly tied to the green space, that it would be a true shame if that's what happened, if this became an issue vote on the green space, if it were held hostage, if the city were held hostage for an indefinite period of time as a result of a potential green space question, either now or in the future, and that shouldn't be the reason that anybody votes on this resolution. This has much deeper ramifications.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak on public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Anyone on council wish to respond to any comments this evening? Councilman Henderson.
Just to address Mr. Savage, I apologize if it seemed like we were trouncing on him 2 weeks ago, so accept my apologies for that, but I want to make sure that we're talking about tomatoes and tomatoes here. When Mr. Savage spoke about the legal action taking, my impression was he had objection because we had some sort of legal action being pursued because of a couple of petitions, and we don't know all the details about that. Yet what he's referring to tonight is the action that we took to have that forwarded to the Attorney General. They're two very specific, different situations that took place there. One was the sheriff looking at improprieties in petitions, and the other is our desire to make sure that the Attorney General understood that that was going on. So again, we may be splitting hairs, but that's the differential between the two scenarios. So hopefully that at least clears that up.
Councilman Baker.
Again, Mr. Savage, thank you for coming, and your passion shows. No question, and I think that you are dedicated to this particular issue, and I think that's noble. I can't ask you a question, but I will ask it now so you can think about it. Maybe we can talk after. But you said that you'd be willing to vote no on this charter amendment if you were assured that we would protect green space. I'd be very curious how we can make those assurances to you and get that information out to know that you'd be willing to vote no on the charter amendment because of its other broad-reaching factions. So if we could speak briefly after the meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Any other comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Regarding the green space discussion, which I think is a valid discussion, we've talked here at the table about making sure we understand the green space in the city and taking a look at it. We had a consensus to ask city administration to look into that, and that's in process. And I will make a commitment from here that, boy, that's really important to me. City manager can attest. I've bent his ear on the phone. Of course we want to protect green space. I do. I can't speak for everyone at the table, but that's something that is valuable to the community, and we want to do so wisely and look at that very carefully. So I can commit to you that I will do my best on that, and I don't see that amendment change as helping me to do that. If anything, I think it will make it more difficult. And that's the unintended consequence that I think people are seeing from this vantage point. We appreciate your thoughts. We appreciate that conversation, and it's a good one to be having. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Abraham.
City staff had put together a report outlining what from that 2004 study was implemented and what wasn't, and it was thorough and it is very much appreciated. My question is that available on the city's website? Can you get it available?
It will be, Councilwoman, but right now we are putting together the cost to further implement the rest of the components, and then we will give that report to council and put it on the website. Sure.
One last comment to address Mr. Green's point for the Troy Historic Village. If you go to troyhistoricvillage.org, that is a much simpler URL to remember. I have no doubt that there is a link to the voting, and the voting does start today. Round 1 is September 11th through the 24th. Second round, should we make that cut, is September 29th through October 12th. And you can vote once a day per person. So it's not Tammany Hall, but you can vote often
Very good. Any other comments from council? Next on the agenda is council referrals. N1 is a resolution submitted by the chair regarding House Bill number 4635. And the reason that I brought this forward is that after last council, when we passed the resolution for the Senate bill, it came to my attention that there was a House bill that was almost identical to the Senate bill, so I thought it was appropriate to bring that also forward to council as a resolution to make sure that our message is conveyed to not only the Senate but to the House. My understanding is it's almost verbatim as to what the House bill is, and that there, although it once again has been introduced by a Democrat, it has gotten support from the Republican side also. So it does appear that it's getting momentum as a something that maybe we could work across the aisles to get accomplished. So to get it on the table, I'm going to move N1, the resolution submitted by myself regarding House Bill number 4635 as printed.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, that we approve N1, a resolution submitted by the mayor regarding House Bill number 4635 as printed. Any further discussion this evening? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is council comments. Any comments from council? Councilman Baker?
Thank you, Mayor. I feel, today's 9/11, and I feel that there's so much going on in our country and our world that revolve, or that our first responders are involved in, whether it's the hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey first, Hurricane Irma in Florida, and I always think of first responders on 9/11 and the service they gave and did in New York and the Pentagon and throughout the country, really, and since then to keep us safe. And ironically, today was also the charity golf outing for the Troy Police Department, so it was very much a first responder day. And I do want to say again, we have an amazing police department here in the city of Troy, and I thank you all for your service. And I hope that all of us do take a moment, if you haven't already, there's still a few hours left of this day, but to pause and think about 9/11 and the lives we lost and the sacrifices that were made, and the things that came out of the tragedy for our country, the unity we had for a while at least, and remember all that is good and powerful and wonderful about America. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilman Pennington?
So I have a comment that dovetails perfectly with what you just spoke about. One of my best friends, his sister lives on Square Lake Road between Rochester and Livernois, and she was walking her dog out to the mailbox to get to her mail, and a man traveling westbound on Square Lake Road had a medical emergency, passed out, and actually veered off the road and struck her about a month ago. And she recovered. Actually, the mirror struck her, and the dog actually, they think the dog saved her life because she froze when she saw the car coming at her, and she was struck by the mirror, spun around, and she was bruised on her side with miraculously no broken bones. But she was taken to Beaumont Hospital, and the officer that helped her out that day was Adam Sanufko, and she wrote a letter. And I asked them to mail the letter to the city, but they handed it to me yesterday at coffee, and I wanted to read it just because it's a great story. So it says, Troy Police, I would like to offer my thanks and appreciation to Officer Adam Sanufko in the handling of my accident on August 2nd, 2017. While I was being cared for by the ambulance attendants, he took my dog Charlie into the house, fed him and fed my cat Ruby, and locked up the house for me. He also came to visit me in the ER at William Beaumont Hospital. We talked at length about the accident, and he eased my concerns about my pets. He told me he handed my keys to my neighbor, and for all of this, Officer Snufko deserves recognition. He really earned it. Yours respectfully, Susan King. We hear about all the negative in the police departments, and so it's good to hear about an officer that went above and beyond. And I'll give this to the city manager so you can give it to Chief. And I just appreciate everything they do for the city, and just another instance of Troy Police going above and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Were you done or no? Just dovetailing on that, 9/11 has an extra poignant place in the hearts and minds in the city of Troy, particularly our Troy PD. This is also, on this day, they also dealt with the passing of Officer Mulvihill, who was a very well-respected friend to many in the police department and one of our serving officers. So on this day, I have taken to reflecting on what a horrible day that was for everyone, but for the friends and family of an officer within our midst, to have that on top of everything just punctuates the day even more. And so we take a moment to think about him specifically today. You mentioned the golf outing today. Just a flavor of when you serve on council, things that you see that don't necessarily make it into a resolution at the table are those efforts of our police department out at different events, the fire department celebrating retirements of volunteer firefighters, and hearing them talk about their joy in serving the community and their bonds with their fellow fire volunteers. That's, at the end of the day, what makes community. And, and as you said, if we can all take a moment, we're having our moments of strife here in the community about our big amendment vote and charter change vote in November, but just perspective and appreciation for one another and for those that serve us.
Very good. Any other comments by council? Councilman Henderson?
So this morning, we got the news, if you're a talk radio junkie like I am, that a friend of Troy, actually, Glenn Hagee, passed away, the handyman. And it's interesting when your life kind of intertwines with various people, but I never knew Glenn other than he would frequent a local cigar place that I would pop into. And Glenn and I developed a friendship after I got onto city council, and he spoke with me about a lot of things. The guy knew everything about everything, and he wasn't afraid to discuss it with you. And so I talked to him about smart meters when I first got on council. That was a big thing. I talked to him about pothole repairs, and he directed me to websites, and even his show, he talked about pothole repairs. He was just a wealth of knowledge and a really, really nice man to talk to. And it's sad to see him go. I mean, I think he was 70 years old. Died of stomach cancer today, but he was a friend of Troy, and just wanted to give a little tribute to him.
Very well. Councilwoman Abraham.
On 9/11, it's natural to think of service to the community, and we talk about the fire department and the police department. There's a lot of wonderful organizations out there. The one I'm going to speak to specifically is the Troy Community Coalition. I want to start putting in people's minds and on their calendars that the annual Celebrity Night Dinner is on October 19th at the San Marino Club. The Troy Community Coalition is a huge partner with the Troy Police Department in making sure our kids stay safe, prevention of substance abuse, and we all know, I think when we were kids, alcohol, maybe marijuana were the big substance abuse. Now it's opioids. And they do a tremendous job of partnering with other organizations as well as the Troy Police Department to prevent that, working with at-risk kids at a young age to make sure that they stop the problem before it actually starts. The Celebrity Night Dinner is one of their biggest fundraisers. I think it is the big fundraiser of the year. Tickets, I think, are $125, but it's money well spent in keeping our kids and our community safe. Now, part of the reason that I'm bringing this up now, and you'll hear this drumbeat until October 19th, is I am one of the champions this year for fundraising. So don't write a check in my name. That's not the important thing. Just write the check because it's a wonderful cause. It's an important cause. You hear about the substance abuse problems that are prevalent, not just here locally or in Michigan, but across the country. But if we start here at home, we can make a difference and make a difference in the county and in the state.
Thank you.
What's that date again, Councilman?
October 19th.
Thank
And I'll be hitting you up for a donation.
Thanks.
Councilman Pennington.
Count me in.
All right.
I think there's others on council that have also done, I think Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick won the honor 2 years ago, or
Last year.
was it last year?
There's a tiara at stake.
Yes, I think we have pictures.
Yeah, there's a tiara on the line.
I want that tiara.
I want to see you in that tiara.
I'm going to get there.
When I was the doing that, I think I came in last place.
You didn't want to win the tiara?
It had a lot to do with wearing that tiara.
Probably photoshopped that.
Councilman McCowan?
It's difficult to follow up. Today's a very sobering day, being 9/11, and at the same time, I want to get this message out. And it's interesting to kind of weigh it against it. But this weekend is Troy Family Days, and thinking of that today, events like that are kind of what this country's about. We got hit and it hurts, but we have healing, and Troy Family Days is a fun event. I've gone with my kids. I'll be there with my kids this weekend. Sunday is our first international day. It's going to be done in conjunction with the Troy Global Troy Advisory Committee. Thank you, Councilman Abraham. It's a fun event. It starts Thursday. Bring the family out. It's a good time, and have a good time.
Thank you. I was going to mention Troy Days myself, especially Sunday, which is we're returning to a theme that was in Troy Days for many, many years. It's going to be International Day, and as Councilman McCowan indicated, it's Global Troy Advisory Committee has worked very, very hard. And I know Kelly Molinar is here today, and Kelly's been instrumental in putting together a lot of what's going to happen on Sunday along with our committee and its committee members. And I would encourage you to come out Sunday because we've booked from the beginning of Sunday to when it closes of international music and dance, and it's going to be a great opportunity to come in and see how our community really works together well, and we get a chance to share music and food and entertainment and dress and all of the things that kind of make us look a little different, but when you take away all of the clothes and the food and that, we're all really basically the same. And it gives you a great opportunity to see the cross-section and diversity of the city of Troy, and it's going to be a great event. And I can't thank the Global Troy Advisory Committee enough for putting this together. It's a testament to hard work, and it's going to be very successful on Sunday. Hope to see you there. Any comments by council regarding the reports in the agenda this evening? Next is comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. I will call on Edward Lee, who wishes to speak this evening. Mr. Lee? Thank you for patiently waiting this evening.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, again, my name is Ed Lee, and I operate a nonprofit here in Troy. What we do is that we help the immigrant community with their English and help them assimilate in American society. We work with people from Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Latin America, and in Asia. And when I first heard about the Troy, Global Troy Advisory Committee, I was very intrigued because it seemed like something that I could relate to. So I attended some of the meetings, and I've been trying to contact some of the people who are directly involved with the committee. But unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that I have some reservations. First off, we're a divided nation. If you look at the city of Troy, you see these ethnic communities. They segregate themselves. You have these communities, they build these enclaves. They have their own support system, their own schools, religious institutions, their own grocery stores, restaurants. Now, we're not against inclusion, diversity, being welcoming, not at all. But to have the city directly involved with this kind of endeavor, I think is counterproductive. I think with the city involvement, it perpetuates this division, and it deepens the isolation that you see in these communities. And I agree that a divided Troy is not healthy. But we don't need a national or statewide movement. We don't need a deep-pocketed foundation. And of course, we don't need the city. Like I said before, I think that the city involvement will be counterproductive. I think what we need is individuals, people from our neighborhoods getting involved and connecting with one another. And this is exactly what we do in our nonprofit operation here in Troy. We bring people together from the neighborhood, the immigrant population, the communities, and American-born residents. We all come together. And what we do is that we strip away.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, sir?
Your 3 minutes is up. How much more time would you need?
I'm running out of time?
You're running out of time. How about,
okay.
How about 30 more seconds? I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Hang
on a minute.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm going to move to allow Mr. Lee to speak for 30 more seconds. Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Pennington, to allow Mr. Lee to please wrap it up in 30 seconds, if you would. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember McCown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Please wrap it up in 30 seconds, Mr.
I have 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
30 seconds?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, what we need is that when we bring these people together, we strip away their cultural heritage, traditional values, and we come together and we speak a common language of English. And we emphasize on the human commonality. And we laugh and we cry together with the human common bond. And that's exactly what we do. Bring everybody together with the commonality of being a human being, and not to emphasize the differences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. That concludes those that have signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. We have a closed session scheduled this evening, so we will be in recess and adjourn in the boardroom for a closed session. Thank you for coming this evening.